Welcome to another episode of Reflecting Forward. I am your host, Pierre Quinn, and I am really excited that you are joining us for another week in this Reflecting Forward experience. Reflecting Forward is brought to you by the Cardell Group. We got to shout out our sponsor at the beginning of the show. The Cardell Group sponsors Reflecting Forward. And for us at the Cardell Group, people are everything. So we partner with performance-focused organizations like yours to help you better unlock your people potential. We design our custom keynotes, workshops, and leadership retreats to equip you and your people to better lead yourselves, better lead your teams, and to better lead the business forward. For more information about what we do at the Cardell Group, feel free to reach out to us at thecardellgroup.com. That is thecardellgroup.com. Okay, episode 6. Episode 6 of Reflecting Forward was still in our Foundations of Leadership portion, or our Foundations of Leadership series. And we want to thank each and every one of you who have joined us for episodes 1 through 5. If you have not watched episodes 1 through 5 of this Reflecting Forward series, I want to encourage you to go back and take a look, take a listen, grab a notepad, open up the notes app on your phone, take down some notes, and leverage those conversations there as you go throughout your week. This week, we're all about empathy in the workplace. Empathy in the workplace. And I know some of you are saying, hey, didn't we do leading with empathy in episode 5? We're still hanging out, having a conversation about empathy. The answer to that is yes. We recognize that we could not cover everything that we wanted to in one episode. Hopefully we'll be able to cover it in 2. And if we don't get to all of it in 2, we'll extend it just a little bit, because wherever I go, having conversations with other leaders, the topic of empathy often comes up. So here on Reflecting Forward, here in this series, we look back with clarity so that we can move forward with certainty. And you know that as a leader, sometimes you don't take the time that you need to pause, to think through what you've just experienced or what you've gone through over the past week, to pull out, to unearth, to pull on the thread of the lessons that could be found in those experiences, and then to think through how you're going to move on from here. And this is what our series is really about. We have this quote from James Clear that we have been writing ever since episode 1. A lack of self-awareness is poison. A lack of self-awareness is poison. Reflection and review is the antidote. And another one of my favorite quotes that talks about this power of reflecting comes from James Dewey, philosopher James Dewey. He says, we do not learn from experience. Nope. We learn from reflecting on experience. We have a segment in Reflecting Forward called Questions, Comments, and Answers, and we would love to highlight your questions, your comments, your answers at the end of our show. So as we're going through our content today, if something just really grabs you and maybe you want to come back to it, or a question pops into your mind, or you have a thought that you want to share, we invite you on whatever platform you're joining us on LinkedIn or on YouTube, to hop in the comments and type your comment, type your question, or even an answer to a question that we've posed throughout the course of our conversation today. And I'm going to ask our producer to put our email address on the screen. That's info@thecardellgroup.com. That's info@thecardellgroup.com. Maybe you're going back and you're watching previous episodes, maybe episode 1 through 5, or throughout the course of your week, something pops into your head relative to something we've talked about in the show. And you thought, man, I really wish I was on to ask that question. If you got time, stop wherever you are, open up the email app on your phone, send us an email, info@thecardellgroup.com, and we would love to take your question and respond. And hey, we may even respond live while we're doing a stream of Reflecting Forward. Before we get to empathy in the workplace, got to do one of my favorite segments. I think we started about episode 2 or 3. This segment called Leadership in the News. And that's when we look at news articles, magazine articles, maybe something that's happening in popular culture, and we see the connection between us and our Reflecting Forward journey. Now, this is an older article, about 2 years ago, but it still has some resonance, still has some relevance for us today. Now, this article is from Colorado Public Radio. It was published September of 2022. And here's the headline of the article. People can't do their work. High caseloads, turnover lead to social workers overburdened in El Paso County. People can't do their work. Caseloads are too high. There's burnout in social workers and pretty much anybody in human services or human development. And we know that this is not just for social workers in El Paso County in 2022. It's really across industries here in 2024 as we're recording this, that people are experiencing just a lot of overwhelm. So in the article, it was a social worker by the name of Brittany Williams who worked for El Paso County's Children, Youth, and Family Services. And she said that she had as many as 52 cases, 52 cases at one time. And if you know anything about social work or the human services world, caseloads take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort. There's a lot of details to keep up with. You're basically tracking all of the finer points of the lives of the clients that you're working with. And it's a lot of phone calls, a lot of follow-ups, a lot of things that need to be done. So can you imagine having to do this for 52 people or for 52 cases? They say optimally, the article was sharing that optimally, if you want to get the maximum, really the maximum out of a caseworker, that they should have around 12 cases. Y'all, did y'all hear that? Brittany Williams, El Paso County's Children, Youth, and Family Services had 52 cases in her caseload. When optimally, child welfare advocates say optimally, you should really have about 12 cases. Just mind-blowing when we think about the amount of work. Even our producer says 52 cases is crazy. The amount of work that it takes. Think about your life, and depending on the size of your family, maybe I know some of the people who watch Reflecting Forward, some of the leaders like you who hang out with us, there are professors or they have jobs where they have to deal with multiple people at the same time. Can you imagine 52? 52. The article goes on to share that people are just simply leaving their jobs. In fact, Brittany Williams, whom the story centers around, from Colorado Public Radio about 2 years ago, she quit. She quit because it was just too much. And that's one of the questions that we're wrestling with today. When we look at the job market, so there's, depending on the reports that you listen to or you watch, maybe about 10 million jobs that are unaccounted for. And people are saying, well, it's because people don't want to work. And there may be some elements of that. We're not quite sure. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics does a lot of studies about this. But what a lot of people are coming back to saying are, well, the psychological toll that it takes on me, and sometimes the lack of empathy for the people, the lack of empathy displayed by the people that I work for, is really making it difficult for me to continue. Like, ideally 12 to 52, it is just, I can't even wrap my mind around the weight that person has to deal with. So my question after reading this article is not just for social workers in El Paso County. It's for anyone who remains in a job or in an industry after there's been a mass exodus of some sort. We were at Dairy Queen a couple of days ago. There was a sign on the door of Dairy Queen because I was going to get out and get some ice cream from our girls. And the sign said, dining is closed. Be patient with us. We only have 2 staff members. And I thought about that in many service-based roles, maybe we've lost empathy for the people that stay, for the people that hang around, for maybe we lose empathy for the caseworkers who say, I can't afford to leave my job, for the people who work at fast food, who are dealing with long lines and frustrating circumstances, sometimes in a tongue-in-cheek or really a pretty nasty response. We say things like, well, nobody told them to stay in that job, or maybe they should have found other work, as justification for some of our nasty attitudes, dispositions, and unrealistic expectations. Because if you were the case worker, the case manager, if you were the Dairy Queen employee, if you were the customer service agent at the airport, how would you want to be treated? How would you feel if you were in those circumstances? I mean, we're in a world now where, depending, and I know there are mixed reviews on this, where people are saying, I never told you to work in delivery services. I never told you to work for Uber Eats or DoorDash or Instacart. You should have found another job because I'm just not tipping you. That could be a bit of a hot button issue. But the question behind it really is, have we lost empathy for people who do jobs in what many cases we wouldn't do ourselves? And then what about when it's us and it's our workplace and we're looking for people to think or to treat us kindly or to treat us better? Or you're in a leadership role and you have to make a decision. What do I focus on? And how is empathy or lack of it impacting your workplace? We're going to pull on this thread just a little more as we dive into our topic today for episode 6, empathy in the workplace, after we pause for a bit of station identification. Okay, Foundations of Leadership, episode 6, empathy in the workplace. The question that I asked during Leadership in the News was, have we lost empathy for those who stay? There's a question related to this that I want us to think about. Do we exercise enough empathy when it comes to the people that we report to? Here on Reflecting Forward, our conversation is to leaders. And have we lost sight of the importance of maybe passing on a little bit more empathy to the people who lead us, to our bosses? Maybe we don't sit in the C-suite at the top of the organization in a senior role. And in the org chart, maybe we're a couple of spaces down. What does it like, or what would be the benefit of demonstrating a bit more empathy to our bosses? Just in recap, we got to answer the definition here on lesson 6, episode 6 of Reflecting Forward. What is empathy? What is empathy? And empathy, and this comes from a Harvard Business Review article, is defined by Annie McKee as the ability to read and understand others' emotions, needs, and thoughts. Empathy is the ability to read and understand others' emotions, needs, and thoughts. And Annie says it's one of the core competencies of emotional intelligence and a critical leadership skill. Now, I gotta admit on this episode, we should have put up a little disclaimer, Mr. Producer. You know, the express views of this program don't necessarily reflect blah blah blah. We may say a couple of things that may be taken as controversial, but they directly apply to the context that we're living in right now. And I'll just bring in one of them right now, because Annie says empathy is one of the core competencies of emotional intelligence and a critical leadership skill. What we're finding, and you have documented evidence of this from your personal anecdotal observations, that people, depending on how you define success, people have found success in their life without working on critical leadership skills. And in fact, that makes it sometimes difficult to introduce the value and necessity of these skills when people have found success without them. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Annie goes on to say that empathy allows us to influence, inspire, and help people achieve their dreams and goals. It enables us to connect with others in a real and meaningful way, which in turn makes us happier and more effective at work. Now, here's the thing. Systems are against you with things like empathy, and empathy sits inside of emotional intelligence. And we had a whole episode on emotional intelligence and how we navigate it. So go back to, I'd say start at episode 4 as we pick up that conversation there. But fundamentally, when we talk about business, and organizational culture, recognize that organizational systems are against you as it relates to empathy or any of the skills that we categorize as soft skills. And much of the work that we do in people development, systems of organizational culture are against you. And here's what I mean by that. This is where it gets pretty dicey, especially if our primary driver is money. And in business, in many of our businesses, that's what we're in business to do, is to make money. And making money really says, for a lot of people, how do I reduce costs as much as possible and increase profits as much as possible? We talked about Industrial Revolution and that model a couple of episodes ago, and how that assembly line model is much of what continues to shape education. And we're in spaces where just get the job done seems to be the order of the day, because you don't have to be an empathetic leader. You don't have to be an empathetic person in order to graduate from college, to complete a certificate program, to go to trade school, to get a good job, to be a great individual contributor. You don't have to do that at all. In fact, you can do extremely well in many of those areas without really leveraging a lot of the soft skills that we talk about here on Reflecting Forward, and in much of the training and development that we do with the Cardell Group. The challenge comes when you are in a people leading role, and you have to make the choice whether or not you're going to care about people. Because soft skill development, leadership development is actually a choice. Now, I know this isn't leadership in the news, but I got to give you another article that highlights this perfectly. And it talks about the leadership perspective of Jeff Bezos. We all know Jeff, right? We know Jeff, we know Amazon, we know how our lives in many cases are guided by this mega entity that Bezos built. It really just changed the game. Clicking on something as we finish this show, you go shopping on Amazon, you click a button, and somewhere between 4 and 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, it's going to be waiting outside your door or in a locker for you to pick up. We have really grown accustomed to almost instant gratification. Some of us remember back in the day, or we're that age, or you ordered something and it took 2 to 3 weeks to get it. And you just many times you almost forgot about it. Here, Amazon Prime, I'm getting it tomorrow. Some cases I'm getting it in the same day. And we applaud Bezos for what he was able to create. There's a Harvard professor that says his approach is good for business, but may lack empathy. Remember, I just said at its core, business organizational culture is it's counter to some of these soft skills, people leading skills that we talk about here on the show. And the professor talks about Bezos, one of the richest men in the world. He led Amazon from this tiny startup, and you remember seeing those pictures of Amazon. It seems like it was on a bedroom wall as he's starting the company. And we appreciate him because he's inventive, he's fearless, he has a hyper focus. But Professor Sunil Gupta at Harvard says these are all great things. They're great things, but they can be a challenge, because for Bezos, he gives his team the opportunity to fail. And we talked about psychological safety in a previous episode. And we know that learner safety, the ability to try things and fail and grow, is really needed if you want to be a part of a high performance team or a high performance environment. And Professor Gupta says, this is great. This is great. And if you work at Amazon, if you work for Bezos, you got 3. You can work long, you can work smart, you can work hard. And Bezos says you got to pick 2. You can work long and smart, or long and hard. You can work hard and long, or hard and smart. You can work smart and long, or smart and hard. You got to pick 2. And that disposition, you can see how setting up things in that way can cause a company to grow by leaps and bounds and burn out people. In fact, Professor Gupta says the billionaire's lack of empathy is one aspect of his character that stands out as a weakness. In this mega successful company, remember, we got to determine what success is for us. And this mega successful company could be a reason why people are burning out. And the story, you've seen the stories about how hard driving, how intense it is as an Amazon driver or as an Amazon package handler, and some of the crazier things that have popped out over the news media over the past several years or so because of this philosophy. We're going to work hard, we're going to work smart, we're going to work long, and to be in this culture, you got to pick two of these, which is great for business, which is great for the bottom line, which is great for our shareholders, but sometimes misses the mark as it relates to empathy. Because again, leadership skill development is a choice. It's a choice. It's a choice. I've led quite a few workshops over the past year or two, and part of this comes up in just about every leadership workshop, just about every team building retreat, even in executive coaching sessions. How do you introduce new perspectives when people check off a box of success with their older methodology? We might not be the most empathetic company. We might not be the best as it pertains to taking care of our employees. But when you look at that bottom line, when you look at the number of widgets we're supposed to make, or the number of boxes we're supposed to make, or the number of cars we're supposed to sell, or the number of homes we're supposed to build, or the number of cases we're supposed to manage, we hit our numbers. And if we're hitting our numbers, why should we change anything? And it's great when you check off that box, but when you start to look under the hood or in the middle, when you start to look at how people are treated in many of these environments, it often leaves something to be desired. I was watching a video by Simon Sinek. If you haven't heard of Simon Sinek, he does great work. Just type in Simon Sinek, start with Y, if you haven't heard of him. And that video, it might send you down a rabbit hole, but it has some really, really good insights that he shared over the past several years. Simon Sinek talks about how empathy is one of the greatest qualities a leader could have. And I want to challenge us to be empathetic with our leaders, because in many cases, our leaders don't even know the game that they're playing. They don't even recognize the game that they're playing. Simon Sinek says the real job of a leader is to take care of those in our charge. That's our responsibility. The real job of a leader is to take care of those in our charge. Why? Because as a leader, in many cases, you are now responsible for the people who do the job you used to do. Now, the tension with that is that no one teaches you. Even in our management programs and our MBA programs and our undergraduate programs and our training and development, we are trained on how to do a specific skill, how to navigate a specific function, and our ability to be competent with that function is actually what moves us up the ladder. And then we're in a spot where we're in charge of people. We're in charge of people, and sometimes we're lost on how to actually guide people. Simon Sinek says, when you think about business, actually two games being played. One is the finite game. And a finite game is a game that has clear rules, has a clear winner. We understand what it takes to succeed. When we do leadership workshops or team building retreats, we gamify a good portion of it. And there's always this idea that it has to be a clear winner. As many times as I've been a part of leadership development programs and we run some sort of game, people are not satisfied with everybody's a winner. We all win here, or we win because of the lessons that we learned and how we're able to apply them to our work. Nope. People want to know. And I've had people pull me to the side and say, I know we all won, but who actually won? It's because we have been raised, culture teaches us how to live by a finite game. Clear rules, clear outcomes, clear winners. That's why in many cases we love competition. We love sports. And if you're not a sports person, maybe competitive dance, maybe it's a card game, maybe it's dominoes, whatever it is. It's this idea that there is a clear winner. We understand the rules. We know what it takes to win, and we want a clear winner to be declared. But Simon Sinek says in most cases, business is not a finite game. Business is an infinite game. And in an infinite game, there are no agreed upon rules. In an infinite game, there is no end. And this is tough because then what do I have to do to win? This is where empathy with your boss actually comes in. You need to recognize the people who are leading companies, in many cases, are leading something that they didn't think about in the beginning. Let's take a startup scenario. We had a client that was a startup. We worked with them for about 6 months. We designed a custom leadership development program, and the culture of that company changed radically. It started off at one point, it was about 100 employees. It was a great culture. Everybody knew each other. Everybody's connecting and building and growing and collaborating. And there's this strong sense of camaraderie and connection there. And then over time, the company continues to grow year over year. The company grows. And by the time it gets to 500-600 people, the culture has dramatically shifted. It's changed so much. People are wondering where they fit. Is there an insider culture? Is there an outsider culture? And they're trying to figure out what is the next stage for them. And sometimes in the conversation, the talk was around leading the industry. The talk was around being the best, being voted top. And it's really a finite game perspective. We want to be top of the industry. We want to lead. We want to be number one. In what game, though? And that's one of the questions that you have to wrestle with as a company. If we're the best, if we're leading, if we're the top, what are the rules of that game? And are we considering ourselves the top or the best or leading if we have people in our organization that don't feel like they connect, like they fit, like they matter, or like we're taking their contribution seriously? One of my favorite things to do is to actually go on Indeed.com and look up employee reviews of companies. Just hear what the people say about these organizations that are asking people to come and work for them. And in many cases, you see people playing a finite game. We want to be the best. We want to lead. We want to be the top. But in business, there's really no end. And because of this, you have to change how you play, because it's gonna go on after you. If something, hopefully it doesn't, but if something tragic happens to you, considering your position, if you get fired, if you get let go, if you get sick, if you vanish off the face of the earth, the job is going to continue. And even long after, say you live a nice long life and you work for a well-known company and you come down to the end of your life, the game is going to continue. The game of business is going to continue. With this in mind, I want to challenge us to be a bit more empathetic to our leaders. I want you to consider these 3 things. Consider the fact that in this infinite game, and many of us are trying to play a finite game to be a winner, and then we get to a pinnacle of success and trying to figure out what we actually won. It's really not a finite game. It's an infinite game, a game that keeps going. The purpose of the game is to keep playing, not necessarily to declare a winner. If that's one of the unspoken underlying tenets of business, recognize this about the person you're directly reporting to. I know some of you saying, hey, I'm not in the business world like that. I work for a nonprofit or I work for a faith-based organization. If there is money involved in some form or fashion, a infinite game, or in some cases, a finite game is being played. Now, understand this about your boss. Your leader is struggling with the rules. They're struggling with the rules because it changes every so often. Let me give you an example of this. Around 2020, we're in the middle of COVID, and then we have George Floyd, and we have all of these things come up about workplace wellness, and there's a lot of DEI that comes up, federal funding. We want people to take care of themselves. We want people to take care of the people around them. And it's a lot. Social media, popular culture, news media, everybody's talking about this, and leaders are struggling to try to figure out how to keep up with this. How to keep up? How do we change our branding and our messaging? And how do we keep current with what's moving right now? This is 2020. We're in 2024. A lot of things have shifted as it relates to DEI. Workplace wellness conversations are changing. People are saying you got to come back to the office in certain industries or in certain businesses. And we've shifted from a lot of those topics of wellness and DEI to now ESG. We're in environmental sustainability and governance. And leaders are like, wait, when did the focus change? When did the rules change? What are we doing now? What are we talking about now? What am I supposed to be doing? Or how am I supposed to be aligning the company around what seems to be the current focus in the marketplace? So your leader is struggling with the rules. Not only are they struggling with the rules, they're struggling with the players. Who is guiding the company? We look at shareholders, we look at boards, we look at accountability structures, we look at the marketplace, we look at social media. And your leader, the person you directly report to, or in the past, some of us work for ourselves, or we are at the top. Previously, that person had to negotiate. They struggled with who's actually influencing what we're supposed to be doing and who are we listening to. So not just struggling with the rules of the game. They're not just struggling with the players of the game. They're also struggling with their inner voice. Everybody has an inner voice, or inner voices, if you listen to Dr. Richard Schwartz and his internal family systems theory. Inner voice or inner voices. If this is the case, how can I be a bit more empathetic toward my leader? Usually when we talk about this portfolio of topics, a lot of the conversation is centered around top down. How can we get the people at the top to be better at empathy? How can we get them to be better at psychological safety, be better at emotional intelligence, be better at storytelling? Top down. There is a huge opportunity for us to think about this from middle up or bottom up. One of the best things that we can do to demonstrate empathy for our leaders is to actually lead up. I'm gonna give you 5 ways to lead up as a way of demonstrating empathy for your boss, for the people that you directly report to, as we're coming down to really the end of episode 6 and our conversation on empathy in the workplace. Here's how we do it. Here's how we do it. 1, better understand the organization, the industry, and the culture. The more you know, the better you're positioned. So understand, if we want to do a better job of leading up and leveraging leading up in order to demonstrate more empathy to the people that we directly report to, understand as much of your company, of your business, your industry, and the culture that you're navigating in as possible. Number 2, recognize how you can align your professional goals with where the company is going. So not just understand what all the pieces that are working. How can you align your professional goals with where the company is going? Now, this may cause a bit of an existential crisis, because some of us may say, I don't know if I want to go where the company is going. That's a totally different episode where we can break down competing values and visions between what you're experiencing personally and the organization that you're working for. Let's see, where's the alignment between where you're looking to go professionally and where the company is looking to go? 3, you got to update the people you're reporting to. Keep them in the loop. The higher you go in an organizational structure, the more you're away from the people who are actually doing the work. I'll say it one more time. The higher you go in an organizational structure, the more distance between you and the people who are actually doing the work. So recognize that your leader, the person that you're reporting to, might not have the ear of people. They don't have the perspective on the organization or even the connections because of where they sit in the organization. And it positions you to keep them in the loop. When they're in the loop, they can make better decisions. When they make better decisions, it better impacts the entire organization. Number 4, just lead with excellence. Just work with excellence. There's a lot of doors that have been open to people over the years. I know this from personal experience, simply because people knew you for doing a good job. And if you can consistently work with excellence, if you can consistently do a good job, that creates a sense of dependability. People know I can go to this person because they're going to consistently do a good job. Now, we don't have time to talk about self-advocacy and not how to get burned out in those situations or take advantage of how to not be taken advantage of. There's time and a place to have that conversation, but recognize once you continue to work with excellence, it puts you in a much better position. And then 5, because you better understand the business and where the business sits, because you've aligned your professional goals with where the organization is going, because you are able to keep the people that you report to in the loop. Now, this is not becoming a spy for people's business in the organization. That's not what I mean about updated in the loop. I'm referencing giving them the perspective that they need to make better decisions. Because you work with excellence, then it positions you to be a trusted advisor for people to ask you, for the people who directly report to you. If you are in a culture where they're supportive of this, to ask you, hey, what do you think? Hey, what do you think? And sometimes that's one of the best compliments that a person who you report to can give to you, asking you, what do you think? So how do you better lead up, understand, align, update, lead with excellence, and become that trusted advisor? Because it's tough. How many of us have been in a place where we had all sorts of ideas of what should be done, and then we got into the seat? We got into the seat of decision making. We became the boss. We were the person that people reported to, and then we realized, this is a bit more difficult than I thought. And in those moments, we want people to have a little empathy toward us. Well, one of the best ways to prepare for that is to demonstrate empathy toward the people who you report to. We are going to hold a few moments for questions, comments, and answers as we close down or come to the end of episode number 6 on reflecting forward. And we'll do that right after this quick break. Okay, questions, comments, and answers here. Episode number 6 of Reflecting Forward. We were talking about empathy in the workplace. Leading with empathy was episode 5. Empathy in the workplace, episode 6. One of the things that I suggested is being in a position to better demonstrate empathy toward the people you directly report to, because the higher you go in an organization, the more of the distance between you and the people who are actually doing the work. Now, that sets off a lot of questions, and sometimes our questions create more questions. We got a couple showing up in our comment section here today. All right. So how can you write up an Indeed job description for the infinite game instead of the finite game? This is a very, very good question. We had to give this one to the experts. How can you write up an Indeed job description for the infinite game instead of the finite game? It's a couple things that come to mind with this particular question. I think one of the things that may be helpful is to avoid some of the language of top, leading, best. I think that's important because those words mean different things for different people. Top, leading, best. So even when you think about mission statements and vision statements, our mission is to become the leading supplier of electrical components in the Southwest region by 2030. Well, what does leading mean? So as much as possible, how can we reduce some of the nebulous language that comes from a finite sense of thinking and invite people to join the organization and join you on a journey. Now, here's what's tough. There's a dance that comes along, not just with job descriptions, but also with interviews and even the first 90 days on the job. There's a dance that's happening. And I think the more clear we are on what we're looking for, the type of people that we're looking for, and the type of company or organization that we are, let's get rid of some of this flowery language. It's tough because there's a marketing element to job descriptions. We want to write it in such a way that attracts people. And sometimes when we create leading, best, top, sometimes when we create job descriptions that say leading, best, or tops, what we're also doing is creating a sense of expectation, an expectation that in far too many cases we don't meet because we said something that was attractive in a post, but we don't have the culture or the infrastructure to actually live that thing out. So I would say my shorter answer to that is reduce references to best, leading, and top, and focus more on the culture that you're looking to build, grow, and maintain. Because for many people in the workplace now, and this isn't just a more recent generational perspective, a lot of people are looking for, that's great that you're the best supplier, the top, or want to be the top supplier of electrical components. What are you going to do to make this a great place to work, a great place to be, and a great organization to partner with for the next few years or for the next several years, depending on where I am in life? All right. I know that question needs a bit of a longer answer. And that might be one that we put a little fold on the paper. Remember back when we used to read books, like physical books, and we fold down the edge of a book to come back to that page? We might have to fold down that edge to come back to that one. All right. Kirk says, what about the chain reaction effect? I'm middle management getting zero empathy. Yeah. Hmm. Zero empathy from my higher ups, and yet my team is thriving based on an atmosphere of understanding between all of us. Okay. So this could even be connected to the previous question about infinite and finite game. Because in some cases, the disconnect is because two games are being played. Upper management could be playing a finite game and you're playing an infinite game. How do we navigate this? I'm getting zero empathy from my higher ups. Now, this is tough. One, understand the organizational game. Understand the culture in which you work. One of the things that comes out of the book Difficult Conversations by some of the leaders in the Harvard Negotiation Project is they were talking about when you see something happen, you got to ask yourself, is it worth it for me to bring this up? And if it's worth it for me to bring this up, is this the right moment, right time, right circumstances, right people involved? Is it worth it for me to bring this up? Some of us go down a road of advocacy looking to change an industry or even to change an organization. And we may win an individual battle, a case battle, but the wider organization may not be may not be changed as a result of our advocacy. So one of the questions that you need to ask is, One, what's going to be the value of me bringing this up? Even before the value of bringing this up, I think the question we need to ask is, if nothing changes, this is the biggest question. This is the biggest question. This is the question that I ask all of my executive coaching clients. If if zero changes, how long you stand? If zero changes, how long you hanging out for? If nothing changes, how long are you willing to be an employee here? And that's the first question. How long are you willing to endure or negotiate or deal with? Two, your productivity positions you for attention. If your team is thriving based on the atmosphere of understanding between all of us, then that means somebody is taking note. And if people are taking note, then use the excellence that we talked about in leading up. Use the excellence as a basis for a conversation. Hey, my team is doing extremely well. And here are some things that I feel like is missing that would be a great benefit, not just to the work that my team is doing, but to the work that I'm doing as an individual leader. That calls for us to really to navigate that courage muscle, the willingness to speak up. Hey, there's something here that I think needs to be brought to attention. I think we need to address. We need to have a conversation about here's what I'm dealing with, knowing full well that nothing may change. And if nothing changes, even after you bring it up to those who you directly report to, even if nothing changes, one, you've done your responsibility of leading, of taking care of the people that report to you. More importantly, or of equal importance, you've done a very good job of advocating for yourself and recognizing that you need to speak up for yourself. And three, you got to ask the question, how long am I going to hang out for? How long am I going to be around for? And sometimes, depending on where you are, depending on the work that you do, depending on the opportunities in front of you, it may be time to look for spaces where the culture is better for you. Now, again, recognize if we're in business in some form or fashion, every organization that we go to is going to be teetering between the finite and infinite game. And you have to determine for yourself how you're going to play the game too. All right. I know we could have gone on for a longer amount of time with those two questions. Thank you for dropping those in. I almost said info at Pierre, but we know that's not the right one. Thank you, Mr. Producer. It's actually info at thecardellgroup.com. If you got questions or if you have responses to the questions that we shared on episode 6 of Reflecting Forward, I want to encourage you to drop us a note, and a member of our team would love to respond to you and even share some of your questions live here on one of our episodes the same way that we did tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed hanging out with us as you start your week. We'll be here second and fourth Sundays for Reflecting Forward. It's really important for us. It's really important. We look back for clarity so that we can move forward with certainty. We hold a little bit of space, just a little bit of time for you to think about what you've gone through as a leader, pull out some of those lessons, and move forward with the insight that you need. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you're on YouTube, if you're on LinkedIn, wherever you're catching us, or even the replay of this, we invite you to join in for our next episode. And remember, take the time that you need, reflect so that you can move forward. We'll see you next time. Take care.